Welcome. Today you join me from what is normally my photography / client meeting space studio, but for the time being it's going to be to do with spinning or indoor cycling. And the first thing we've got to do is get my road bike, which you've probably seen if you go to the gym, onto a turbo trainer. So pretty recently I tried to order a trainer and it was quite difficult because at the moment no one's really delivering anything. But it came a few days ago. This is a Tacx NEO 2T. And it's what's called a direct drive trainer, which you can read about in my blog post if you're interested. And it basically means that this trainer replaces the rear wheel of the bike. Now, I've sort of prepared the bike as best I can for this, so as I'm going to be filming and recording audio and stuff, I need the bike to be super quiet. So I've replaced the chain and the rear derailleur and some of the shifting cables and stuff, so everything's nice and new and lubricated and whatever. The trainer itself is meant to be super quiet. But because we're moving this onto the bike and replacing the back wheel and all that, it might not be indexed perfectly. We're going to be taking the cassette off, all the cogs are going to come off, and they're going to go onto this, and we might have to do some gear reconfiguring and stuff. So just in case any of you get a direct drive trainer or any turbo trainer where you're trying to make a setup like this, whether it's for my classes or for anything else, then I thought this might be a fun thing for you to watch or informative thing for you to watch so that you can learn what's going on. So the Tacx NEO is meant to be the best turbo trainer you can get, but we'll find out if it is. And I'm super excited that it's going to let me do my classes. So let's get to it. Something about Zwift, which is apparently really fun. And if anyone else uses Zwift, I'll be able to do some kind of rides. All right, this is probably a through axle adapter, which is for a different type of bike. I don't know, maybe it's not, but we'll find out. Put it down here for now. This is a power cable, but interestingly, for the Tacx NEO, you don't need a power cable. It can enable a few extra features, but it's one of the few trainers that you can actually use without extra power, as the electricity you generate from cycling can power it. Let's see adapter. This must go with this. And there it is. Okay, piece of polystyrene. This is the trainer in its folded up state. A lot of people have been complaining that the Tacx NEO is really hard to carry, but I actually think it's quite a compact design when it's folded up. So even if it is difficult to carry, I think it's going to be good. It's heavy as bloody hell.
It looks heavy.
25 kilograms apparently.
Oh my god. Yes.
This is the front wheel stand. As when you're on most turbo trainers, the back wheel is slightly, the back of the bike is slightly higher than it would be if you had the normal wheel on it. The Wahoo kick is an exception, but for most trainers it's slightly higher. So in this case, you need this just to raise up the front wheel a little bit. Also stops it from wobbling around. You can use books if you're using a different trainer, but this one handily comes with it, and that's it. Very simple unboxing.
Empty box.
Empty box. That was a very simple unboxing experience. I thought there was a chance this wasn't going to be as heavy as other ones because it's not got a flywheel, a traditional flywheel. Most turbo trainers have a separate flywheel that the cassette attaches to, and it spins and it provides the inertia to simulate a real road bike.
It's so heavy.
It's ridiculously heavy. This one doesn't have a separate flywheel. It has motors that simulate, apparently. It can simulate the inertia of a 125 kilogram flywheel, apparently. Don't know how it feels. Apparently it feels good. We'll find out in a bit. In terms of carrying it, I don't know what people are moaning about. To be honest, you can actually carry it from these two handles. And it's awkward, but you can carry it. You can walk around with it like this. Whereas a lot of people talk about how it doesn't have a handle. Anyway. Ooh.
Ooh. Ooh.
The TIE Fighter's coming alive. Okay, that was quite easy.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. I mean, straight out of the box, that's a pretty simple setup experience.
Really simple.
Right, so it's the bike goes this way. This is where the rear of the bike mounts. This is actually plastic. I thought it was going to be metal. Considering how heavy it is, I thought this would be metal, to be honest. But it's some kind of strong plastic material. Now, as you might have noticed, there's no gears. This is an empty cassette holder, and it doesn't come with any. So some direct drive trainers do actually come with some gears already. I'm going to have to take it off my old wheel in order to mount my bike to this. So that's going to be our next step. It does feel like really well made, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it better be for the price. Okay. Now let's get to my bike. Those of you that know me might know that I was in a pretty serious crash a year and a bit ago. This was the bike that I had that crash with, and it's not technically safe to ride outdoors anymore. I mean, there's damage all over the place. The front wheel and the back wheel are slightly out of alignment, and anything over 20 miles an hour, it starts to wobble a little bit. So I thought this would be the perfect bike to, you know, just use for indoor training. So I'm going to leave this mostly permanently mounted to the turbo, and then at some point I'll get another dedicated road bike. But this is going to be the donor for making my improvised spinning bike situation. As mentioned before, I've replaced most of the drivetrain, so it should work fine once we're not using the back wheel. So to begin with, we unlatch the rear brakes, not unlatch, loosen. So most brake systems will have this that basically loosens them or tightens them so you can get rear wheels off. So we're going to loosen it. So we've got a little bit of clearance to get the tyre out. We're going to undo the quick release, which is way too tight, even though I just fastened this the other day.
I mean, if you hold the camera...
There we go.
There you go.
Right. So we undo the quick release, and now I can take the back wheel off the bike. Right, back wheel off. Cassette's still on the back wheel, so that's what we need to transfer. All these cogs need to go from here onto there. So we're just going to leave the bike to one side. You should really try to avoid getting the chain on stuff that will make it dirty, so I'm just going to use this piece of polystyrene. Okay, back wheel. There are different tools you use to get cassette gears off. I've only actually done this a couple of times. So I'm taking our quick release axle out. Just pop it there. Right. Here I've got a chain whip, which is one of the more important bits, and then a couple of different cassette bolt situations. I think one of these is Shimano and one of them's Campagnolo, and I can't remember which is which. So let's just try one of them, because my last bike had Campagnolo set up, so... okay, I guess right. The chain whip is to stop it spinning, because you undo this anti-clockwise, and you can see the problem. That's not going to go anywhere. So we use the chain whip in order to basically hold it still by wrapping it around one of the cogs. That will hold it still, holding out pressure, and then I can turn it. And with great difficulty, it's harder than I thought. There we go. I'm just going to put them down, hopefully in one piece. There we go, on this piece of cardboard. Right here. If you want to give your gears a thorough clean, this is the time. When you take them off your old wheel, when you've got all these cogs separated, you can clean them properly, obviously. These are pretty good, to be honest, so I'm just going to leave them as they are, and I'm going to slot them straight onto the free hub of the Tacx. If we're lucky, we can just get this to slot on. Now, there is an uneven spacing, so if you look at the grooves here, one of them's smaller than the others, so here we've got a small groove. So we do have to look for, on the free hub, the small groove, which is here at the top. So just span it around. So now we can slot it on. If you do take your gears apart, it's worth pointing out now, there are spacers in between them. The spacers don't have the small grooves, so they can go on any way you want. Just make sure that every gear has a spacer, otherwise you're going to have a bad time. Fingers are getting messy now. I say every gear. The smaller ones have a built-in spacer. Just in the middle is some that you need. Okay. Where is my tooly tool? Okay, that's on as tight as I'm willing to make it. We should be good to mount the bike to this now. So we've got a spinning free hub, and we've got the entire flywheel spinning in that direction. Oh,
So cool.
I say flywheel, using the wrong term. Okay, time to put the bike on it. This is my first time doing this. So I'm looking at this situation as well and thinking, there's no mounting points really. So I either have to use, presumably, my quick release axle or the axle it came with. And I'm not sure if the one it came with is a through axle or a quick release axle, which is slightly different. So I think it does come with the correct quick release axle, the one that I'll be using. And it comes with some adapters for through axles. Through axles are just the newer standard in cycling. This is the assembly instructions that probably don't say anything useful. Apparently, if we're using an 8, 9 or 10 speed, we have to put this onto the cassette body before we mount the gears onto it. If you're using an 11 or a 12 speed, you don't have to. This is a 10 speed, so I don't know what difference this is going to make, but we're going to put it on. So I have to take it off again. And it's off again. Tiny little spacer goes on. And then thankfully this tool just about clears and doesn't hit the leg, which is lucky. Oh no. I'm already messing up my £1,200 trainer. Now, it's time to put the bike on. You would normally remember what gear you left it in. I did not. So I'm going to quickly shift into my biggest. I'm going to wrap the chain around the biggest cog. And then I'm going to just plonk it down. This is where we're going to find out that my bike frame is bent. There's nothing to really grip onto here in order to tighten it. So it's a bit of a pain. Okay, that should be fine. Whew. Slightly worried about my derailleur clearance. When I bought a new derailleur, I ended up getting a long cage one or a medium cage one. Sort of by accident, I just got whatever was cheapest, knowing that it wasn't going to be that important. And I'm not sure if it's catching or not. Now, as you can hear, it's struggling with indexing a little bit here. This is a common thing whenever you change wheels or cassette on a normal bike, that your indexing can go out a little bit. Tell you what, it's not plugged in or anything, but it's producing a lot of resistance. So we're just going to go back up the cog, see if it changes up. See, that should have changed up, and it's not. There needs to be a little bit more tension so that this changes into the next gear. So we're just going to adjust the barrel adjuster anti-clockwise a little bit. This is how you index your gears. A bit further. It's making that clicking noise because it's trying to change gear. There we go. So we've just turned the barrel adjuster anti-clockwise, which adds a bit more tension to the chain, and more tension takes you up into the bigger cogs at the back of the bike. So now we'll just test the gears again. So we're going to go back down to the smallest. Yep. Up one. Still no. A bit further anti-clockwise. Okay, try again. Back to the smallest gear. Yep. One up. Nope. Try again. Okay, now we've got there. So up one, up two, up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and to the final. Okay, right. Seems to be all right now. But I'm slightly worried that in this smallest gear, we've got a derailleur issue on the trainer, so I think that I can only use my second easiest gear, which isn't a problem because the trainer provides its own resistance, but something to consider if you've got a medium or long cage derailleur with this particular trainer, there is a slight clearance issue. Okay, we're going up and down nicely. Now we're going to try going into the big ring, which is going to make this really hard to push. So front chain ring is going up now. So I'm in the biggest gear the bike's got, which is making it really hard to push. Let's go down into easier gears at the back. See if it still shifts. Yep, but once again, we can't use the smallest gear, so that's something that I'm just personally going to have to keep in mind, that I can only use 9 of my 10 speeds at the back. Whew, that was a workout in itself for my upper body. All right, I'm going to have a quick ride. There's a bit more that I'm going to do before I actually work out here or film classes here, because you might have guessed, but when you're riding an indoor bike, you end up sweating quite a lot. So to make sure that sweat doesn't go all over the carpet, I've got some exercise panel floor covering things. The lovely thing about this over a normal indoor bike or a spinning bike is that I don't have to deal with SPD cleats. So I've got my actual speed plays on it, which are a proper pedal system. And if you've got SPD SLs, Lux, Times, any of the superior pedal systems to normal SPD, then it's really nice to be able to use a bike like this, well, you know, your own bike. Seems pretty sturdy, although, apparently, the Tacx NEO is designed to have a little bit of flex on purpose, so that when you're out of the saddle riding, it moves a little bit, so we'll see how that goes. This is a smart trainer, so it can connect to phones and computers and stuff. So at the moment, I'm not plugged into anything, I'm not connected to anything. This is working completely wirelessly and unconnected. And it still provides resistance, obviously. I'm gonna guess it's providing a constant amount of resistance that will obviously be harder the faster I pedal and harder the bigger of a gear that I switch into. So at the moment, I'm in my big ring and I'm, you know, halfway down my cassette and it feels fine. If I start to pick up the cadence, I can feel a lot more resistance, which is good. Also handy feature on this bike, this trainer, I say handy, I just think it's cool. Underneath, we've got an LED that changes colour depending how much power you're producing. So if I ease off, it turns to blue. And this is a very easy pace, a very easy power. If I put a bit more power down, we hit purple, and then red. Hopefully in my class this is going to be red most of the time. So I'm going to shift into a harder gear, which should provide more resistance, even without changing anything on the trainer, because what's happening now is in a harder gear ratio, it's effectively spinning the back wheel faster. So it's providing more resistance, even if it's a fixed amount of torque that the trainer's providing. So in class, you probably won't need to fiddle with your gears very much. But if you've ever got problems like you're producing too much or too little torque to get the resistance you want, especially on some trainers that can't produce as much power as this one can, you might want to change the gears on your bike, just so that you're changing the effective wheel speed. Now, one of the reasons I got this particular trainer was so that we can do standing climbs at low cadences and very high powers, as this is the highest gradient rated trainer. Apparently this can simulate up to a 25% incline, which just means that it can produce a lot of resistance. And you might be able to see, but it allows the bike to move around a little bit, which apparently is by design, so that it simulates a real bike a little bit more accurately. I'm not sure I'm yet convinced though that the front wheel riser is better than just some books, because it seems to restrict the handlebar movement a little bit more. Even without any manual controls, even without any communication to the trainer, I'm able to do a pretty heavy, slow climb, like I'm producing a lot of power. We've got a red light underneath to prove it, at a low cadence. And this is one of the things that I was looking for on an indoor trainer. It's something that most bike trainers struggle with. They can do 90, 100 RPM high efforts, but low cadence and heavy is hard. So, pretty impressed. I want to know what the volume of this is like when I'm at higher cadences. So I'm going to shift into an easy gear ratio and just try and get a bit of a spin on. So I'm producing almost as high of a power as earlier when I was doing that heavy standing climb. But I'm probably at 100 RPM maybe. And it's not too noisy. Like, I can talk at a normal volume, and I think at least that I'm audible. So especially with the setup where I'll have a dedicated microphone, I don't think it's going to be a problem. This is one of the times where most trainers make the most noise. It's because as you increase the cadence, the flywheel on most of them ends up spinning a lot faster. Whereas because it doesn't have a separate flywheel or a belt, we don't have that problem. Now it's providing a lot of resistance, so I can really power through, get a lot of torque down. Woo! Nice climb. I'm just going to put the flooring down. So I've got these foam tiles, which I'll link in the description if you're interested, so that you can make yourself a little sweaty area. It will also insulate your trainer from neighbours, because this one's not too bad, but most indoor trainers produce a lot of vibration, and the noise they produce is transferred through the floor. So you want something to absorb a lot of that vibration noise as much as possible underneath. So like an exercise mat, a lot of the turbo trainer companies make specially made things for it. These ones are pretty affordable and versatile, because not only can you have them under your bike, but you can add more or less because they interlink with each other. So you can have a workout space for non-cycling classes as well. So I'm going to get those in. I've measured the space and I should be able to have 6 of them and have a good amount of coverage in this room. And I'll see you in a minute. If you have wooden flooring, this is also a good idea, because if you've got cycling shoes like these, this carbon metal situation is not very wooden floor friendly. So it might not be a problem on a carpet, but in this case it is. Okay, we've got a floor. My new foam floor covering is causing issues already. Okay, we're on. It is plugged in. Are there lights anywhere? We have a light, it's red. I don't know if it's meant to be red. Now this is the point where I should probably download some kind of application. We're back. I found an iPad and I've downloaded the Tacx training app. So we'll see what this does. Ah, this is interesting. Now that we're plugged into electricity, this is the simulated flywheel situation. So this is actually using a motor to simulate the wheel still spinning around that a heavy flywheel would do. So this is why they say that it's a 125 kilogram simulated flywheel. So when it was off, the freewheel came to a stop straight away. But now it doesn't. I mean, really all it's useful for is making a racket after you stop pedaling, but there we go. It has detected a Tacx NEO 2T. Perfect. Connecting. Connected. Okay, it's already telling me things. I'm producing a pathetic amount of watts. I'm going at a slow speed, and I'm pedaling very slowly. Sounds about right. I have no idea how this works. Start a new workout. Okay, fine, whatever. Power. If I tell this to start producing a horrific amount of power, it's going to be impossible to pedal, isn't it? In order to simulate maximum torque, I'm going to ride my bike in an easy gear, which means the trainer has to work proportionately harder in order to produce a lot of power. So we're going to see if in this setup it can do a high power. I'm in a 39 tooth small ring at the front. I'm in a 17-ish tooth mid ring at the back of the cassette. So if I can tell the trainer to make me produce a lot of power, while pedaling at a slow cadence, we can test how much torque this can actually produce, which is one of the main things I want to test on this. So we're going to tell it that I want some serious power. I don't know if I'm warm enough for this, but anyway, let's just kick off at 250. So we're using a little plus thing and saying I want 250 watts. I've not pressed go yet, but when I press go, I'm guessing this is going to start producing a lot of resistance to force me to be at 250 watts, even at a low cadence. So I'm going to find 60 RPM, 65, 65 is pretty common in my classes. And then we're going to get it to produce the resistance. Okay, it doesn't feel like it's got that hard, but apparently I'm at over 250 watts. So I'm not sure if this is an ERG situation. If it is, it's very, very smooth. All right, so I'm at 65 RPM, 250 watts, easy. I'm going to guess, if I pedal faster, okay, it is, yeah. The power spiked up to 500 watts for a second, but now it's automatically brought the resistance down so that at a new cadence, give it a second. So I'm at 100 RPM. It's messing around with the resistance to bring it back to 250 watts. Good. Okay, I'm going to slow down now. Slowing back down. All resistance is coming back. Power's not dropped very far. Now I'm back at 65. If you drop into too low of a cadence, it becomes very difficult very quickly. So, right, if I'm at 60 RPM, it's aiming to keep me at 250 watts. So I have to maintain a constant cadence for a few seconds. It's very, very smooth. You can't feel any steps in the resistance changing. And if I go to a higher cadence, power will spike to begin with, but then the resistance decreases so that at this new 110 RPM, the power will eventually settle back to 250. And this is all being done automatically, which means that in my classes, when we're trying to do efforts like this, where we maintain a constant power at different cadences, or when I want to change the power, it can alter these things automatically. You don't have to touch any gears, you don't have to touch any resistance things, and it stops you from cheating. When it adjusts automatically, you don't have to tap things like I'm doing. This is just for demonstration purposes. If I ramp up that power, I can feel it getting heavier. I can take it up. Let's see what it feels like if I get to 500 watts. I should be able to do a slow cadence, heavy standing climb at 500 watts. So let's see. Okay, it's getting heavy. I'm taking it up. Now this is where you might feel limitations in some trainers. This is coping quite well. I'm at 500 watts, 65 RPM. It's a lot of torque, and it's fine. As I said, you can make this even easier for the trainer if you go into a big ring at the front, small cog at the back. That puts less effective torque through the trainer. If you come to a stop though, you can really struggle to pick the pace back up. So it seems like this software has a feature to avoid spiraling and dying, which is what can sometimes happen in ERG modes, where if you're setting a really high power and you drop the cadence right down, it tries to increase the resistance way too much to an impossible level, and then you just come to a stop. The Tacx software, at least, seems to have a feature to avoid that, where if you do start to slow down, it backs the resistance off to allow it to catch up again. That's good. I'm not sure if the software that I'll be using for my classes can do that or not, but it's something I'll have to experiment with. I'm going to try and do a climbing sprint effort. As a spinning instructor, it's quite difficult to do this without music, but there will be music in my classes. So I'll attempt to do a very high power, low cadence, 20-ish second effort. I don't really have a good timer around, but we'll just see how it feels and we'll see how this trainer responds. This is very stable, but the back of it might move around a little bit. Spinning bikes do. Even big, heavy spinning bikes do jump around when you're doing very, very high torque efforts, so we'll see how this copes. So I'm going to try for 800 watts, I think. 800 at low cadence, We'll see how that feels. Ah! Okay, that's a lot of resistance. Whew. Okay, I struggled way too much then. 800 at low cadence might be a bit ambitious. We'll see how we get on in my classes. I've not done a class or ridden for a month now. Seems a bit of fitness is going out the window. Ooh. Okay, over 700 watts, it gets very, very heavy. I'm going to do a 600 watt, 65 RPM, not a sprint effort. There we go. You can cope with it. That's great. And knees off. Okay, happy. It works well. Here are my assessments. This is great. So I do quite like the amount of movement that we can get side to side, because it does feel more natural when you're doing standing climbing efforts. It is stable enough that it's not going to outright fall over, but it moves enough that I think it's better for your ankles and joints than a completely rigid bike would be. It adjusts power extremely, extremely smoothly. So when I'm changing the power, I'm essentially doing an ERG mode, which is what my bike profiles are going to do, where they try and get you to a power regardless of how fast you're pedaling. And it feels great, hard obviously. Holding over 700 watts at climbing cadences is extremely difficult. That's something I do want to train at more, and it's good that this bike can actually simulate that. Sorry, this trainer can actually simulate that. So if you have the resources, I would thoroughly recommend the Tacx NEO 2T. I don't know if you can tell from just me talking, but it is also very quiet. Now I hope you enjoyed looking at my sweaty face and my excessive hair. I'll see you around. My Instagram is COG_Cardio, Facebook page COG Cardio, website cogcardio.com. You should find links for various products and blogs and stuff in the description. And I hope to see you soon in one of my actual classes. Thank you.
And cut.
We're going to undo the quick release, which is way too tight. Can't get my finger in it. Okay, I need something to help with this. Alright, I'm going to use a piece of cardboard. I'm not gonna include this.
I mean, if you hold the camera.
There we go. Well, I'm instinctively holding brakes. The brakes are not doing anything. But as it works, oh, lights are a problem. I'm too tall for this. Because the lack of hairdresser quarantine look, combined with the fact that I was well overdue one anyway.